We brought our cameras out to the streets today of Connecticut, and we asked the question to citizens there because obviously a major vote took place last night in the state Senate, and it's likely to go through both the Assembly and get the signature when it reaches the governor's desk. So we went to Greenwich, Connecticut, and we asked folks there what they thought about repealing the death penalty.
There is a lot of innocent people going to their deathbed that are innocent, and I think the overturning the death penalty would be a good thing.
But I think if someone takes the life of someone else, that their life should be taken.
Put them away for life in solitary confinement. I think that's worse.
All right, let me bring in the rest of our panel, and I'll bring you as well into this. Joining us, in addition to Senator and Andrew, is Dominic Carter, veteran political journalist and author, and Tom Doherty, former advisor to Republican Governor George Pataki. And as I mentioned right before the break, we introduced Connecticut State Senator Scot Frantz, a Republican, voted against the repeal last night, and Andrew Whitman, who filed that initial report. All right, guys, I'm going to bring in the callers here, but I'm going to put you both with our guest here tonight. If you could have casted a vote last night, what would you have done, Tom?
I would have kept the death penalty in place. I mean, I think that if you look historically and look at the numbers from like 65 to 80, when there was a tremendous uptick in murders in the United States and no death penalty enforcement, and then you went from, say, 99 to 2000 and 95 to 2000, where there was a great uptick in death penalty legislation, you saw the rates just go double in the other direction. It's a deterrent. And
you really think so?
Yeah, I do.
We did a whole thing last night where we went to, listen, I can buy the argument, Tom, if you say, listen, I don't care if it's a deterrent, I don't care if it's cost effective. Those two, you know what, who did what they did to the pet family, wipe them off of the face of the earth. I'm going to have a hard time arguing that one or treason or certain cases where a guy with a life sentence who kills a CEO in prison, want to give him another life sentence. I get it. But what was it, Andrew? 90% of criminologists, 88% said it's not a deterrent, but I buy the argument.
I'm just telling you what the numbers are, so you can buy it or not buy it. Those were what the numbers were, but I agree with you. From my standpoint, as if the two undercover police officers in Staten Island, they caught their killers. They were executed by two killers. I'll pull the trigger myself. So, you know, there's a lot of reasons why we should have it. Some are very personal, as you said, the family that, you know, was slaughtered in Connecticut. But at the end of the day, I mean, it becomes a very personal decision. The senator made a very valid point. This isn't 20 years ago. We have DNA.
But not everybody's afforded DNA test. And we know this, and we go into it now. Guys on death row are still being refused. And listen, every week it seems there's some story, Dominic, where a guy's cleared from DNA. So we know this isn't perfect. And as Andrew told us last night here, there's examples of people that have been put to death, 8 we believe, and 11 more potentially, that probably weren't the right guy.
I'd say repeal it, but life without the possibility ever of parole.
All right, let me see what the callers have to say. We have a caller from Philadelphia. Jennifer's on the line, and Jennifer, I understand you have a personal connection to this issue. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Tell us your story.
Well, I have a best friend of mine, and we grew up together. I'm from Lock Haven, Pennsylvania, and we grew up together. And she was put on death row on April 19th, 2005, for a crime she didn't commit. It was a lot of racial things going on with it, and the judge, you know, the little towns, and the judge and everybody together, and, you know, so I definitely don't agree to it because she's got to explain to her 12-year-old little girl why someone's putting her to death for a crime she didn't commit.
All right, thank you very much, Jennifer. Let's go to Maura. She's calling us out of Rivervale in New Jersey. Maura, you just heard from Jennifer, who said, hey, if they put this person to death there, we don't know if she's innocent or not here, but you can never unwind it. You can't, you know, correct a mistake if somebody's innocent. Is that enough of a reason for you to say, I'm opposed to the death penalty or not?
Well, I feel the death penalty should be used for someone who commits a sexual murder of children. And secondly, also for someone who is a serial killer who mutilates or is a cannibal towards adults.
All right, Maura, thank you. Senator, I got a question. You know, some people say, listen, it's like pornography. I know it when I see it. A heinous crime is a heinous crime, and the Pettit family tragedy certainly fits the description. But What if instead of those 3 people, a guy goes to rob a liquor store and there's a shootout and 3 people die? Wasn't with a premeditated nature, but 3 people are still dead. How do we as a society decide which ones are really heinous and which ones are still murder but not as bad? Isn't it kind of a judgment call here?
It's a total judgment call. It's a gray scale on which we're operating. And I would say that if you had 2/3 of a focus group, here are the circumstances of a heinous crime, they all agreed on it, I think that's the test right there. You know, it's more difficult in the court of law when you have judges trying to decide, is this a heinous crime or what kind of crime is this? In the court of public opinion, it's pretty darn obvious which ones are heinous and which ones are not.
I have a question. Has the state of Connecticut, to your knowledge, ever taken up the question of compensation for wrongfully executed people? Not that I'm saying it's happened, but there are laws in the books in a number of states as to what the level of compensation is. Are you aware of any?
Not to my knowledge. I don't think it's ever been discussed in the state of Connecticut. That probably would have come up last night because the whole issue of wrongful executions did come up numerous times.
Andrew, you got some comments online on this, right? We've been asking obviously the same question online as we have on the phone line.
We do. We got an email on our Facebook page from Kevin Muglia. He wrote, the death penalty needs to happen in a timely manner and not some 20 years later. If there are witnesses and it's not a circumstantial case, 1 appeal and you're done. It will also save the taxpayers a ton of money. And Ben Personic added, to criminalize lesser crimes and focus on rehabilitation to reduce prison populations and make sure the only people there are those who really deserve it, but don't put someone to death unless you have the power to bring someone back to life just as easily. We also heard from a number of groups and organizations who have connections or interest in the Connecticut death penalty debate, who checked in on Twitter. The National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty. We're glad to see the repeal moving forward. Death penalty is getting to be a trend, or repeal is getting to be a trend. People of Faith Against the Death Penalty wrote, it's evidence that the death penalty continues to erode as a relic of Old South justice, racist, classist, costly, error-prone. The Kentucky Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty brings us closer to abolition nationwide. I think we can stop it right there. But obviously there are a number of groups across the country encouraged by the developments.
And it's interesting, Tom, you look at the polls. 3/5 of America still believe in the death penalty, but the trend is 5 states right now, including Connecticut here, in the last 5 years have voted to repeal it, and I think another 5 states, not in the likely suspects either, like Kentucky and other ones, they're set to vote on it as well here. You think at the end of the day this is going to end up at the Supreme Court?
You know, what I do think is that I think one of the reasons you're seeing, as you said, I think that individually many of us still support the death penalty, but as Americans we always want fairness. And so when you start hearing stories of individuals who, you know, as this woman called in and said her friend's innocent, we don't know if her friend's innocent or not, is that as Americans we want a fair system. I really believe that. But I think that, you know, at a time, you know, particularly, you know, in the 70s, the 80s, as crime went up and up and up, people just got very fed up with it. And when you see executions of police officers, I think that we don't have the discussion when you have solid cases. Again, I think we go far left, we go far right without using common sense to say, if you put someone on death row for life, if you just put them and lock them away.
Well, you and I know, they give me the rap. You talk to people like Barry Schechter at the Innocence Project, okay? There are cases where they said they got this guy stone cold, and they were wrong. Now, if somebody's going to be prepared to say, you know what, fine, we screwed up once or twice, but overall it was worth it. I don't hear people willing to make that argument here because you can't turn the clock back. It's a tough one, and I can appreciate, Senator, how you guys struggled into the wee hours last night on this one, because I think, like many people, I want to have it both ways, and unfortunately, either you have it or you don't here, and I think that's where you struggled. But I appreciate you giving us a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Indeed, absolutely.